The knock came just as the wind sounded, like it wanted to tear the cabin apart. Elias. Turner froze. Nobody traveled through Blackridge during a storm like this. Not decent folk. Not outlaws. Not even the wolves dared wander the mountain trails. When thunder rolled this close, another knock dot harder. His hand settled on the old revolver resting beside the fireplace. "If you're looking to rob me," he shouted over the rain, "you picked the wrong house." A woman's voice answered through the storm. "I'm not here to steal." Silence. Then, quieter. "I'm trying not to die." Something in those words reached a place inside him he thought had turned to stone years ago. He opened the door. The wind nearly ripped it from his hand. Standing there was a young woman soaked from head to toe, her dark hair plastered against her face. Mud covered the hem of her blue dress, and one sleeve was stained with blood. She could barely remain standing. Before Elias could ask another question, she collapsed into his arms. When she opened her eyes the next morning, sunlight slipped through the cabin windows. For a long moment she stared at the wooden ceiling as though she'd forgotten what safety looked like. Then panic rushed back. She tried sitting up. Pain shot through her shoulder. "Easy." Elias stood near the stove, pouring coffee into 2 worn cups. "You've been through enough." She looked around. One room, one bed, simple furniture, a saddle, hanging beside the door. Nothing expensive, nothing dishonest, just a lonely rancher's home. "I shouldn't have stayed." The storm decided otherwise. She studied him carefully. He looked somewhere around 35, broad-shouldered, with tired eyes that carried too many winters inside them. "You treated my wound. It needed stitching." She'd looked at the clean bandage. "You could have left me outside." "I almost did." It earned the smallest smile. "I'm glad you didn't." He handed her the coffee. "You got a name?" She hesitated. "Names could be dangerous. Especially hers." "Claire." He nodded. "I'm Elias." Neither asked for a last name. Sometimes strangers stayed safer that way. Outside, the storm had disappeared, leaving the valley shining beneath fresh sunlight. Elias fed the horses while Claire watched from the porch. She noticed how gently he spoke to the animals, how they trusted him completely. People who treated horses kindly rarely carried cruel hearts. "You live alone?" she asked. "For 6 years. No wife." His hands stopped brushing the horse. She didn't say another word. She understood enough. Some griefs never needed explaining. That afternoon she insisted on helping. "You should rest." "I've rested enough." "You can barely lift your arm." "I can peel potatoes." He almost laughed. Almost it had been so long since another voice filled this cabin that he had forgotten how empty silence truly was. She burned the bread, dropped a bowl, nearly cut herself twice, but somehow the cabin felt warmer than it had in years. That evening she noticed something resting on the mantel. A small framed photograph, a woman smiling beside Elias, holding a little girl. Claire looked away before he noticed, but he already had. "My wife. I'm sorry." "Fever," he swallowed. "Our daughter followed 3 days later." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I know what it's like to lose someone." "You have children?" "No." She stared into the fire. "But I lost my family." The sadness in her voice wasn't practiced. It sounded lived, real. Elias didn't ask more. He had learned that broken people revealed their stories only when they were ready. Days passed. Claire said she would leave once her shoulder healed, yet every sunrise found another reason to stay. A fence needed fixing. A horse had thrown a shoe. The chickens escaped. She wasn't especially good at ranch work, but she never stopped trying. Elias caught himself smiling more often. That bothered him. He had promised himself after Sarah died that no one would ever enter his heart again. Promises made to grief often felt easier than keeping promises to life. One evening they watched the sunset from the porch. "You ever think about leaving this place?" Claire asked. "Where would I go?" "Anywhere. My memories live here." "Sometimes memories become prisons." "And what about yours?" She didn't answer. Instead she stared toward the distant mountains, as though expecting someone to appear. That night, Elias woke to the sound of hooves. Fast. Too fast. Claire stood at the window before he even rose from bed. Her face had gone completely pale. "They found me." Before Elias could ask who she meant, 3 riders surrounded the cabin, and one of them shouted her real name. "Emma Whitmore." "Emma?" The voice cut through the night like a rifle shot. "You've got nowhere left to run." Elias looked at Claire Dot, or rather, Emma. She closed her eyes. I wanted to tell you. You can tell me after we survive this. He loaded another cartridge into his rifle. The riders waited outside the circle of lantern light. There are only 3, Elias whispered. Emma shook her head. No, what do you mean? They never travel alone. Almost on cue, shadows emerged from the darkness. 5, then 7. By the time the horses stopped moving, nearly a dozen armed men surrounded the ranch. Elias cursed under his breath. The man at the front removed his hat. His silver hair matched the coldness in his eyes. Emma, he called, you've made this difficult. She stepped toward the door. No. Elias caught her wrist. They're here because of me. I figured that much. If I leave, they won't hurt you. The old man smiled. I'm afraid that's no longer true. Elias frowned. What does he mean? His stranger looked directly at him. Piss, you've seen her. Emma's face drained of color. They'll kill you either way. The old man laughed. I raised you better than that, child. Never tell a man your enemy's plan. Elias stared. You know him, Emma whispered. He's my uncle. Silence settled over the room. My father owned the largest cattle company in the territory, she continued. When he died, everything passed to me, and your uncle wanted it. She nodded. He forged papers, paid judges, bought deputies. The old man's smile disappeared. You were always too clever. Emma's voice trembled. You murdered my father. I saved this family from weak leadership. You poisoned him. I gave him an opportunity to rest. Elias tightened his grip on the rifle. The old man spoke again. Bring me Amaranta. No, I'll pay you. No, spare your life. No, the old man's expression hardened. Then bury him with the cabin. Gunfire exploded across the valley. Windows shattered. Wood splintered. Elias fired once. A rider fell from his saddle. Another bullet struck the porch railing inches from Emma's face. He pulled her to the floor. Stay down. The attack lasted nearly an hour. When dawn finally painted the hills, the riders retreated, not because they had lost, because they knew Elias had little ammunition left. They'll be back, Emma whispered. I know. You should leave before they return. He looked at her as though she had spoken nonsense. I don't abandon people. You don't even know me, and know enough. She lowered her eyes. No, she whispered. You really don't. That afternoon, while Elias repaired the shattered windows, Emma wandered into the barn. Hidden beneath loose boards in her saddlebag rested a leather journal, her father's journal. The only thing proving the ranches, the cattle, and the land still belonged to her, along with names, judges, sheriffs, businessmen, every person her uncle had bribed, enough evidence to destroy powerful men across 3 counties. She closed the journal quickly. Elias could never know. The more he knew, the sooner he would die. That evening, a young deputy rode onto the property, waving a white cloth. You come peacefully. Elias kept his rifle aimed. What do you want? The deputy climbed down slowly. My name's Daniel. He looked no older than 22. I overheard enough last night. Emma stiffened. I'd work for your uncle willingly. She looked surprised. He owns a sheriff. Daniel nodded. And everyone wearing this badge. He removed the silver star from his chest. I quit. Elias didn't lower the rifle. Why should we trust you? Donna looked at Emma. Because your father once saved my mother's farm. Emma remembered. A widow, with 3 sons. Her father had cancelled every debt they owed. Daniel smiled sadly. He never even told anyone. Emma's eyes filled. That's the man he was. Daniel reached into his coat. I stole these. He handed Elias several boxes of ammunition, and a folded map. The old mining tunnel beneath Black Ridge. Elias unfolded it. Daniel pointed to a narrow passage. It leads straight into Pine Creek. Emma's heartbeat quickened. We can't escape. Daniel shook his head. Not if your uncle guesses where you're headed. What then? The deputy looked directly at Elias. You don't run. You fight. Late that night, Emma stood outside beneath a sky full of stars. Elias joined her. You should have kept walking after the storm. She smiled faintly. I've thought about that. Life would have been simpler for you. He looked toward the dark hills. It was already simple. Were you happy? He didn't answer. No, she whispered. He finally looked at her. No. The word hung between them. Honest. Heavy. She stepped closer. So why are you helping me? He searched for an answer. Instead, he found himself brushing a loose strand of hair away from her face. I don't know. Their eyes met. For one impossible heartbeat. Everything else disappeared. Then a gunshot echoed from the ridge. Daniel collapsed. Beside his horse, his final warning tore through the night. "They're already here," Emma screamed. Elias sprinted toward the fallen deputy as bullets ripped through the dirt. Around them, Daniel was still breathing. Barely blood spread across his shirt. "You have to listen," he gasped. Elias knelt beside him. "Save your strength." "No." Daniel grabbed Emma's hand with surprising force. "Say no." "About the journal." Her heart stopped. "They searched my office. They found letters from your father." Another cough sent blood across his lips. "They'll never stop chasing you." Elias looked at Emma. "The journal." She couldn't speak. Daniel's fingers loosened. "Don't let him win." His eyes closed forever. Emma covered her mouth to stop herself from crying out. A good man had died because he chose to stand beside her. Elias removed Daniel's badge and placed it gently over his heart. He deserved better. So many people have. She could barely breathe beneath the weight of her guilt. "If I had knocked on your door." He turned sharply. "Don't. They're destroying everything you have. They're trying. They killed him. They did. They'll kill you." He stepped closer until only inches separated them. "Then let them answer to me first." His voice carried no anger, only certainty. For the first time in years, Elias had something worth protecting again, and that frightened him more than the men outside. By sunrise they buried Daniel beneath the old cottonwood overlooking the valley. Preacher. No choir, only whined. Elias removed his hat. He died doing the right thing. Emma whispered through tears, "I wish more people did." When they turned back toward the cabin, smoke rose from the eastern pasture. The cattle scattered in panic. "They've started the fires," Elias said. It wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was war. They spent hours driving frightened animals away from the flames. Emma ignored the pain in her shoulder. Again and again, she rode into the smoke beside Elias. At one point her horse stumbled. She would have fallen beneath the burning fence. If Elias hadn't caught her, he pulled her into his arms. For a long moment neither moved. "You keep saving me," she whispered. He looked into her tear-filled eyes. "I don't know how to stop." Neither did she. Slowly, almost afraid of the feeling growing between them, Emma reached up and touched his weathered face. "You've given me more kindness in 1 week than I've known in years." He leaned closer. She closed her eyes. Their lips met gently, not out of passion alone, but relief, hope, the quiet promise that perhaps two broken souls could still become whole together when they finally pulled apart. Elias rested his forehead against hers. "I was sure my heart had died." She smiled through tears. He was only waiting. For the first time since Sarah's death, Elias believed the future might hold more than memories. But happiness in the West rarely lasted long. As they returned to the house, Emma noticed the front door standing open. She froze. We closed it. Elias's hand drifted toward his revolver. Inside, everything had been torn apart. Drawers emptied, furniture overturned, the floorboards ripped. Open, someone had searched every inch of the cabin. Emma raced to her room. The saddlebag was gone. So was her father's journal, and from somewhere outside, her uncle's laughter echoed across the valley. Emma stood frozen in the middle of the room. The empty space where her saddlebag had been felt larger than the cabin itself. "It's gone," she whispered. "The journal." Elias searched the wreckage one last time, though he already knew the truth. They found it. Emma slowly sank onto the floor. "My father spent years gathering proof." Her voice cracked. He knew they would come for him someday. She buried her face in her hands, and now everything he died for is gone. Elias knelt beside her. "No." She looked up. "It isn't gone." She shook her head. "You don't understand." "I understand one thing." He gently lifted her chin. "They wanted more than that journal." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "They wanted you to believe you'd already lost." The words settled inside her. Fear had done exactly what her uncle wanted. It had stolen her hope, before he ever stole her future. Then Elias remembered something. The first morning. Emma blinked. "What?" "You asked for your saddlebag before. You even asked where you were." She nodded slowly. "I remember. You opened it after I stitched your shoulder." Her eyes widened. "I never opened the journal." "No." He took something out. Emma stared at him. Then suddenly she remembered. A folded envelope. She had hidden it inside the lining of her coat because it seemed less important than the journal. With trembling hands she reached into the old coat hanging beside the fireplace. Her fingers found the hidden seam. The envelope was still there. She gasped. Inside rested a single handwritten letter, her father's handwriting, along with the official land seal bearing the governor's signature, and one final page listing every account, every witness, and every location where duplicate records had been stored. Her father had expected betrayal. The journal had never been the only evidence. Tears streamed down her face. He planned for this. Elias smiled. He planned for you. By sunset they were riding towards Silver Creek. According to the letter, the duplicate records were hidden beneath the floor of an abandoned church. It was a dangerous trip. Every trail could hold an ambush. Every stranger could be watching still. They rode together. Neither spoke much. They didn't need to. Sometimes love grew strongest in silence. Late that evening they reached the abandoned church. The roof sagged with age. The wooden cross leaned sideways. Emma counted 6 floorboards from the altar exactly as the letter instructed. She pried them loose. Beneath them rested a rusted iron box. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were property deeds, bank records, signed confessions, letters, everything. Enough to destroy every lie her uncle had built. She laughed through tears. We did it. Then applause echoed through the church. Slow, marking. Her uncle stepped from the shadows, surrounded by armed men. I knew your father would hide another copy. Emma's smile vanished. You followed us. I followed the rancher. He looked at Elias. A loyal fool is easier to predict than a clever enemy. The old man extended his hand. Give me the box. No, Emma answered. I wasn't asking you. His men aimed their rifles. The old man's eyes settled on Elias. Choose. He smiled coldly. The woman, or the truth. For a long moment, the church fell completely silent. Then Elias made his choice. He handed the iron box to Emma and walked toward her uncle alone. The old man smiled. I knew you'd surrender. Elias kept walking. Now, before anyone realized his intention, Elias threw himself into the old man, sending both of them crashing through the rotten wooden railing of the church balcony. The floor beneath. Several gunmen collapsed with them. Rifles scattered. Chaos exploded inside the church. Emma grabbed the box and ran as gunfire erupted behind her. She looked back only once. Elias was still fighting, outnumbered, bleeding, but still standing. Then she heard him shout, with everything he had. Left, right, Emma. She did, with tears blurring her vision, praying she wasn't leaving the man she loved to die. The courthouse in Redstone had never seen so many people. Farmers, ranchers, merchants, widows, families, who had lost everything because of one man's greed. Emma walked through the front doors carrying the iron box. Behind her came 2 ministers, 3 honest deputies from neighboring counties, and dozens of witnesses whose names appeared in her father's letter. The courtroom remained silent as every document was placed before the judge. Every forged signature, every stolen deed, every confession one by one, the lies unraveled by sunset. Warrants had been signed. Emma's uncle tried to flee town. He never made it past the bridge. The same men he had bribed abandoned him. When they realized his power was gone, he was arrested without a single shot being fired. Justice had arrived years late, but it had arrived. Emma should have felt victorious. Instead, she could think of only one thing. Elias. She rode harder than she ever had. The journey back to Black Ridge felt longer than the one that had brought her there. Smoke still drifted above the church ruins. The place was almost empty. Broken boards lay scattered across the ground. She searched desperately. Elias, only the wind answered. Her heart began to break. Then she heard a familiar voice. You always did knock your way into my life. She turned. There he stood beneath the old cottonwood. His arm was wrapped in a bandage. A bruise darkened one side of his face. He looked exhausted, but he was alive. Emma ran to him without another thought. She threw her arms around him and held him, as though letting go might lose him forever. A thought. I know, you idiot. I've been called worse. She laughed through tears before kissing him with all the fear, relief, and love she had carried inside her. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. The judge asked if I wanted my father's estate restored, and I said yes. He smiled. You earned it. She looked into his eyes. Then he asked where I planned to live. Elias suddenly looked uncertain. I told him. She reached for his hand. That home isn't a ranch. It isn't. She shook her head. It isn't money. No, it's wherever the person you love is waiting. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind moved gently. Through the grass. The storm that had brought them together felt like another lifetime. Elias reached into his pocket. I've carried this since Sarah died. He opened his hand. Inside rested his old wedding ring. I thought I'd be buried wearing it. Emma looked at him with quiet understanding. You don't have to forget her. I never will. And I would never ask you to. He smiled. But I finally understand something. What? Loving you doesn't erase the life I had. He gently slipped the ring into a small wooden box instead of putting it back. On it, honors it. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Then he took out another ring. Simple. Handmade. Forged years ago by the town's blacksmith. For no one in particular. I bought it on a day I believed happiness was still possible. His voice trembled. I never imagined I'd use it. He looked at her with the same quiet certainty he had shown the night he opened his door during the storm. You asked me for one night of shelter, I remember. He gave me back my future. He knelt. Emma Whitmore. She was already crying. Will you spend the rest of your life knocking on my door? She laughed through her tears. Only if you promise to keep opening it. I will. Then yes, yes. Months later, the old cabin no longer felt lonely. Fresh flowers rested beneath the windows. Children from neighboring ranches often filled the yard with laughter. Their broken fence had been rebuilt. The barn stood, stronger than before, and beside the front door hung a small wooden sign Elias carved himself. It read, "Some storms destroy a home. The right one leads you to it." Whenever rain tapped softly against the roof, Emma would smile, squeeze Elias's hand, and remember the night a desperate knock changed lonely lives forever.